Fear has a chemical signature, and scientists can now describe it down to the molecule. Stranger still, your body doesn't just produce that signature, it edits it, holding part of it back before it reaches the air. So the real mystery was never what your sweat contains. It's what your sweat leaves out. Ahead, the exact compounds your glands release under threat, how one breath of them can rewire a stranger's nervous system, and why the missing part might matter more than the rest. For decades, researcher George Preedy at the Monell Chemical Senses Center studied exactly what sits inside human sweat when the body panics. A research focus that sounds like an odd way to spend a career until you see how much it explains, and a much stranger job title than most people at a dinner party are prepared for. Ordinary sweat is mostly water and salt, simple, forgettable, easy to ignore. Stress sweat is different. Under threat, your apocrine glands release a cocktail loaded with steroids, fatty acids, and volatile compounds your nose can barely register consciously, but your brain absolutely notices. Preedy's lab found this chemical mix shifts measurably between calm and frightened states. Not louder, not stronger. Different, a completely separate chemical fingerprint, written in real time, every time fear hits. Some of those compounds barely exist in ordinary sweat at all. They only appear once the amygdala fires, once cortisol floods the bloodstream, once the body decides a threat is real. You are, quite literally, manufacturing a substance that only exists because you're afraid, which is either alarming or the most honest thing your body does all day. But knowing the chemistry existed wasn't the interesting part. What it did to the people standing nearby was, in 2009, researchers Denise Chen and Wen Zhou ran an experiment that still unsettles people who hear about it, mostly because nobody involved got a say in the matter. They collected sweat from participants watching frightening films, then had a separate group smell it while judging a set of ambiguous facial expressions, faces sitting right on the line between neutral and afraid. The volunteers who inhaled fear sweat consistently read those faces as more fearful. Their perception of the world had shifted, quietly, without their permission, from a scent they couldn't even identify. Nobody in the room raised their voice. Nobody said a single alarming word. The warning traveled entirely through the air, and it worked anyway. Reading a face differently is one thing. Rewiring a body is another entirely, and that's exactly what happened next. Psychologist Jasper de Groot at Utrecht University tracked what fear sweat does to a person's face and eyes the moment they smell it. When volunteers were exposed to fear-based sweat, their eyes widened, their nostrils flared slightly. Their gaze started scanning faster, sweeping a room the way a body does when it's hunting for a threat it hasn't located yet, which is an unsettling amount of choreography for something nobody consciously decided to do. Nobody told them to do this. Nobody could stop it either. One person's chemical signal had quietly reprogrammed another person's face into an early warning posture, and neither of them said a word. Think about what that means. Somewhere in your evolutionary past, a group of early humans standing in tall grass didn't need a shout to know danger was near. One person's fear became everyone's alertness, spreading person to person the way a current runs through water, faster than language, faster than thought, which raises an obvious question. If a fear signal spreads that fast and warns a group that effectively, why wouldn't every population evolve to leak as much of it as possible? Here's the twist, and it runs backwards from what you'd expect. It wasn't the chemical that mattered most. It was the amount your ancestors learned to hold back. Every population that leaked a slightly weaker signal under pressure had an advantage predators couldn't exploit and allies couldn't misread as panic. Too much signal, and a predator locks onto you first. Too much signal, and your own group reads you as a liability instead of a lookout. The chemistry never disappeared. It got quieter generation after generation, refined by the same pressure that shaped every other survival trait you carry. What your sweat is missing today, the restraint built into it, is the real fingerprint of 100,000 years of selection. That's why this still matters, in a life with no predators hiding in the grass. Walk into a negotiation, and the people across the table are reading you before you speak, not consciously, not on purpose, through a channel neither of you can name. Step into a poker room, and you'll hear players talk about a table going cold, a room quietly tightening up after one player loses big. Ask them what changed, and most can't explain it. Nothing was said. Nothing was visible. Everyone at the table adjusted anyway, reading a signal none of them could consciously name. Sit in a crowded elevator with a stranger who's just had a bad phone call, and you'll feel your own shoulders tighten before you've registered why, as if your body got the memo a full second before your brain did. The channel opens earlier than most people realize, too. There's evidence that infants, long before they have any language to work with, respond to a caregiver's stress sweat with measurable changes of their own. A warning system installed before the warning can even be explained in words. Whatever this channel is, it isn't something you learned. It's something you were born already fluent in. And it isn't only about being read by others, it's about what you do with the reading. That damp palm before a presentation, that sudden hyper-alertness in someone else's eyes across the table, most people treat those as proof that something has gone wrong. But they're not malfunctions. They're 100,000 years of inherited chemistry, running exactly the process it was built to run, whether the threat is a predator in the grass or a stranger judging your idea in a meeting. What actually changes outcomes was never about producing zero signal. It's about the part of the signal your body has spent 100,000 years learning to withhold. The same restraint that once kept a hunting party calm enough to survive being hunted itself. So the next time a stranger's face shifts before you've said anything, or a room full of people grows tense for no visible reason, remember what's actually moving through the air. It's chemistry older than language, still doing its job, still connecting nervous systems that never needed words in the first place. Your shirt goes damp, and you assume it's just moisture. It's a message, one written in a chemical vocabulary your body has been fluent in since long before you could speak.